The storm's arrival. The twin suns of Calatrix 4 hung low on the horizon, their amber glow illuminating the rugged landscape of jagged cliffs and silvery dunes. The air hummed faintly with an electric charge, signaling the approach of another storm. Evan Kale, a scrappy scavenger with a knack for finding value in forgotten things, adjusted his visor to shield his eyes from the glare. His battered skimmer hummed beneath him, a testament to years of tinkering and patchwork repairs. Evan wasn't out here for leisure. His current job was simple: recover a lost cargo pod that had crash-landed during a supply drop to the mining colony a few kilometers away. He was used to solo runs, no unnecessary chatter, no one to split the pay with. But today felt different. There was a strange tension in the air, a weight that seemed to settle in his chest as he approached the crash site. The first signs of the storm began to brew behind him. Low, rumbling thunder rolled across the desert, and dark clouds loomed, their edges tinged with a faint green. Evan glanced back, muttering under his breath. Better make this quick. He found the pod wedged between two rocky outcroppings, half buried in the sand. Its surface was scorched, likely from the atmospheric entry. Jumping off his skimmer, he retrieved a toolkit from the side compartment and began prying the pod's latch open. The mechanisms were jammed, and it took a few minutes of grunting and swearing before the lid finally gave way with a loud hiss. Inside, the contents weren't what he expected. Instead of the usual shipment of mining equipment or supplies, he found a sleek, oblong container with alien markings etched along its surface. It pulsed faintly, emitting a low hum that sent shivers down his spine. Evan leaned closer, inspecting the markings. They were like nothing he had ever seen before, and he had seen plenty in his years of scavenging. "What the hell is this?" he murmured. Before he could investigate further, a faint sound caught his attention, a soft, pained whimper. He straightened, his eyes scanning the dunes. It wasn't the wind or the storm. It was something alive. Grabbing his portable scanner, he followed the sound, climbing over a rocky ridge. There, at the edge of a shallow ravine, lay a creature struggling against the rising sands. Its form was unlike anything Evan had ever encountered. It had the lithe build of a predator, with sleek, iridescent fur that shifted colors like oil on water. Its eyes glowed faintly blue, and its long, slender tail twitched weakly. Evan froze, torn between instinct and curiosity. The creature was clearly alien, and judging by its wounds, it had been caught in the crash. Blood, a viscous silvery liquid, oozed from gashes along its flank. It let out another weak cry, and something about it struck a chord in Evan, a plea for help, raw and desperate. He hesitated only a moment longer before sliding down the slope toward it. The storm was closing in fast, and if he didn't act now, the creature wouldn't survive. "Easy there," he said softly, not sure why he was talking to it like a stray animal. "I'm not gonna hurt you." The creature flinched as he approached but didn't have the strength to fight back. Evan crouched beside it, inspecting the injuries. Whatever it was, its physiology was unlike anything he'd studied. "All right, let's get you out of here," he muttered. It took every ounce of his strength to lift the creature into his arms. Its body was deceptively heavy, its muscles coiled with latent power. He could feel the faint vibrations of its low growls, but it didn't resist. The storm winds began to howl, carrying with them grains of sand that stung against his skin. Evan stumbled back to his skimmer, placing the creature carefully in the cargo hold. He strapped it down securely, his mind racing with questions. Who or what was this thing? And what was it doing out here? As he revved the skimmer's engine, he glanced back toward the ridge. A strange unease prickled the back of his neck. Something else was out there. He couldn't see it, but he could feel it, a presence, watching, waiting. The storm's gusts obscured the horizon, making it impossible to tell if the shadows he saw moving in the distance were real or just his imagination. "Time to go," Evan muttered, slamming the throttle forward. The skimmer shot across the dunes, its stabilizers whining against the turbulent winds. Behind him, the storm churned like a living beast, swallowing the landscape in a swirl of darkness. He spared a glance at the creature in the cargo hold. Its eyes fluttered open for a moment, meeting his gaze. There was an intelligence there, something far beyond an animal's instinct. "Hang in there," he said. "We're gonna figure this out." But deep down, he knew this wasn't just a random rescue. Whatever he had just pulled from the sands wasn't just another strange alien lifeform. It was something much bigger. And whatever forces had sent it crashing to Calatrix 4 weren't going to stop looking for it. As the storm bore down on him, Evan pushed the skimmer harder, his mind a whirlwind of possibilities. This wasn't the job he had signed up for, but it was the one he'd been thrust into. And something told him it was just the beginning. The pursuit begins. Evan's skimmer tore through the dunes, its engine straining against the relentless winds of the oncoming storm. He squinted against the sand blasting his visor, keeping his focus locked on the barely visible path ahead. The cargo hold rattled, and he risked a glance back. The alien creature lay curled tightly, its chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. The iridescence of its fur had dulled, and faint streaks of its silvery blood stained the floor. "You better be worth all this trouble," Evan muttered under his breath, gripping the controls tighter. The storm wasn't the only thing on his mind. That unsettling feeling of being watched hadn't left him. It gnawed at his instincts, keeping him on edge. He scanned the skies behind him, his visor's HUD struggling to cut through the thickening dust. For a moment, he thought he saw movement, dark shapes darting through the storm clouds. And then he heard it, the low, ominous hum of engines. "Damn it," he hissed. 3 sleek hovercrafts emerged from the storm, their dark hulls glinting faintly in the dying light. They moved like predators, swift and deliberate, closing the distance with precision. The distinct insignia on their sides, a circular emblem etched with alien glyphs, told Evan all he needed to know. These weren't scavengers or pirates. They were enforcers, and they were here for the creature. Evan slammed the throttle forward, pushing the skimmer to its limits. The engine roared in protest, but he didn't care. He wasn't about to let them catch him. Not without a fight. The first volley came without warning. Bright streaks of plasma lit up the storm, slamming into the sand just meters from his skimmer. The impact sent a spray of debris into the air, rocking the vehicle violently. Evan gritted his teeth, wrestling the controls to keep it steady. "You've got to be kidding me," he growled, glancing at the creature. Its eyes opened briefly, glowing faintly as it regarded him with an almost pleading look. "Yeah, I know. Hold tight." The hovercrafts closed in, their weapons charging for another attack. Evan swerved hard, weaving through the dunes in an attempt to throw off their aim. The skimmer's stabilizers whined in protest as it navigated the uneven terrain, but he knew it wouldn't hold out much longer. Another blast struck the ground, this time closer. The shockwave sent the skimmer skidding sideways, nearly flipping it over. Evan cursed, his hands working furiously to right the vehicle. The alien creature let out a low, pained growl from the cargo hold, its body trembling with visible distress. "Hang on!" Evan shouted, as much to himself as to the creature. He spotted a rocky outcrop ahead, its jagged peaks jutting out like the bones of some ancient beast. It wasn't much, but it might provide cover enough to buy him time to figure out his next move. Evan steered the skimmer toward the outcrop, narrowly avoiding another barrage of plasma fire. The hovercrafts adjusted their course, relentless in their pursuit. He could feel the tension in his chest tightening with every second. Reaching the outcrop, Evan brought the skimmer to a sliding halt, jumping out before the engine had even fully powered down. He scrambled to the cargo hold, his heart pounding. The creature was barely conscious, its breaths shallow and labored. "You're not dying on me now," he muttered, grabbing his portable medkit. He had no idea if it would work on this thing, but he had to try. As he worked, the hum of engines grew louder. The enforcers were closing in fast. Evan's hands shook as he applied a coagulant spray to the creature's wounds, watching as its silvery blood began to clot. It let out a weak whimper, its glowing eyes meeting his for a fleeting moment. There was trust in that gaze, a fragile, unspoken bond. "You owe me big time," Evan said, forcing a small, nervous laugh. A sudden explosion tore through the outcrop, sending chunks of rock raining down. Evan ducked instinctively, shielding the creature with his body. The enforcers had arrived. 3 of them disembarked from their hovercrafts, their forms clad in sleek, black combat armor. Each carried a high-tech weapon, glowing ominously in the dim light of the storm. "Step away from the cargo," one of them ordered, their voice amplified in cold. Evan rose slowly, raising his hands in mock surrender. His mind raced. He wasn't a fighter, but he wasn't about to hand over the creature without a fight. "Look, I don't know what you think I've got," he started, his tone casual despite the tension, "but I'm guessing it's important enough for you to shoot first and ask questions never." The lead enforcer stepped forward, their weapon trained on him. "That creature is property of the Syndicate. You've interfered with a classified operation. Surrender it, or we will take it by force." Evan's jaw tightened. "Property, huh? It doesn't look like it agrees with you." The enforcer didn't respond. Instead, they raised their weapon, the glowing barrel charging with energy. Evan's instincts kicked in. He dove to the side just as a searing blast tore through the air, narrowly missing him. "Guess we're doing this the hard way," he shouted, rolling to his feet. Grabbing a plasma cutter from his belt, Evan ducked behind a boulder for cover. The enforcers spread out, their movements precise and coordinated. Plasma fire erupted around him, the heat searing the air as he tried to think of a way out. A low growl echoed from the cargo hold. Evan risked a glance back and saw the creature struggling to its feet, its iridescent fur beginning to shimmer faintly. Its glowing eyes burned with newfound intensity, and it let out a sharp, guttural cry. The enforcers hesitated, their weapons trained on the creature now. What the one of them started, but they didn't get the chance to finish. The creature lunged, moving with a speed and agility that defied its earlier state. It struck the nearest enforcer, its claws slicing through armor with terrifying ease. Sparks flew as the enforcer's weapon discharged wildly, missing its mark. The other two opened fire, but the creature was already on the move, a blur of shifting colors and raw energy. Evan watched in stunned silence as the creature dispatched the enforcers with brutal efficiency. Within moments, the skirmish was over. The hovercraft stood silent, their pilots incapacitated. The creature staggered back toward the skimmer, its strength fading as quickly as it had returned. Evan rushed to its side, catching it before it collapsed. "Okay," he said, his voice shaky, "you're definitely not just some random alien." The creature's glowing eyes flickered weakly as it looked up at him. "Run," it rasped, its voice barely audible but unmistakably sentient. "They'll send more." Evan's breath caught in his throat. Whatever this creature was, it wasn't just running from danger, it was carrying a secret worth killing for. And now, he was a part of it. Without another word, he hoisted the creature into the skimmer and took off into the storm, knowing their fight was far from over. Secrets in the storm. The storm raged on as Evan pushed the skimmer to its limits, the battered vehicle skimming dangerously close to the rocky terrain. The alien creature lay slumped in the cargo hold, its breathing shallow, its faintly glowing eyes flickering as if fighting to stay conscious. Evan's mind was racing. Who, or what, had he just gotten himself involved with? The cold voice of the enforcer echoed in his memory, "Property of the Syndicate." That phrase alone sent a chill through him. The Syndicate was notorious across the galaxy, a shadowy organization with its tendrils in everything from interstellar politics to black market tech. If they wanted the creature this badly, it wasn't for some petting zoo. Evan glanced at the creature again, its shimmering fur now dull and matted with silvery blood. "You're not dying on me," he muttered, gripping the controls tighter. "Not after all that." A mysterious signal. As the skimmer darted through the storm, Evan's comm panel lit up, crackling with static. He frowned, glancing at the display. It wasn't unusual for stray signals to bounce around during storms, but this one seemed deliberate, a series of rhythmic pulses. A distress beacon? Or a trap? Fantastic, Evan muttered. Just what I needed. Despite his better judgment, he tuned the receiver, narrowing the signal. The pulses sharpened into a coherent transmission, a garbled but urgent voice cutting through the interference. To anyone listening, safe haven, coordinates, avoid Syndicate. Evan's heart skipped a beat. A safe haven? Could this be the sanctuary they needed? He quickly locked onto the coordinates, overlaying them on his navigation map. They were close, relatively speaking, just a few hundred clicks north, past the ridge of glass. The creature stirred behind him, letting out a weak growl. Evan turned his head slightly, his voice softer now. "Hey, you're gonna make it. Just hang on a little longer." But even as he said it, he knew the syndicate wouldn't give up so easily. They'd be on his tail again soon, and this storm wouldn't hide him forever. A deadly pursuit. Just as the thought crossed his mind, the skimmer's radar beeped angrily. Red blips appeared on the display, several of them, fast-moving and closing the distance. Evan swore under his breath. "They're like damn vultures." The hum of engines grew louder, cutting through the storm's roar. He risked a glance over his shoulder and saw the faint glow of lights piercing the swirling sand. Syndicate hovercrafts, sleek and deadly, were closing in again. "All right, you want me? Come and get me," Evan muttered, his adrenaline surging. He veered sharply, guiding the skimmer toward the ridge of glass. The jagged expanse loomed ahead, its surface a chaotic sea of fractured crystalline structures. Navigating it was suicide, but that's exactly what Evan was counting on. The Syndicate's hovercrafts were fast, but they weren't built for terrain like this. Plasma bolts streaked past him, narrowly missing the skimmer. The storm lit up with flashes of energy as the Syndicate pilots opened fire. Evan swerved hard, narrowly avoiding a blast that exploded into a nearby dune, sending sand and debris flying. The skimmer shuddered violently as it hit the edge of the ridge. Sharp shards of crystalline rock scraped against its hull, the stabilizers whining in protest. Evan gritted his teeth, steering carefully through the labyrinth of jagged spires. Each turn was a gamble, the narrow paths leaving no room for error. Behind him, the Syndicate hovercraft struggled to keep pace. One of them miscalculated a turn, slamming into a crystal spire and erupting in a fiery explosion. Evan allowed himself a grim smile. That's one down. But the others were relentless. They maneuvered through the ridge with chilling precision, their weapons charging for another strike. The creature awakens. Suddenly, a low growl emanated from the cargo hold. Evan glanced back and froze. The alien creature was stirring, its fur glowing faintly once more. Its eyes snapped open, burning with an intense blue light that seemed to pierce through the storm. Before Evan could react, the creature rose unsteadily, its body trembling with latent energy. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice tinged with both concern and awe. The creature didn't respond in words. Instead, it raised its head, letting out a guttural cry that resonated through the ridge. The sound wasn't just a noise, it was a force. The air around them seemed to vibrate, and the storm itself shifted in response, the winds howling with renewed fury. Evan's eyes widened as he saw the Syndicate hovercrafts falter. Their engines sputtered, their weapons misfiring as the storm seemed to turn against them. Crystalline shards broke loose from the spires, hurtling through the air like missiles. Two more hovercrafts were struck, their hulls pierced by the razor-sharp projectiles. They spiraled out of control, crashing into the ridge below. The remaining hovercraft retreated, its pilot clearly unwilling to face whatever power the creature had just unleashed. Within moments, the Syndicate was gone, their lights vanishing into the storm. Evan let out a shaky breath, his grip on the controls loosening slightly. "Remind me never to get on your bad side," he said, half joking. The creature collapsed back into the cargo hold, its glow fading once more. Evan was at its side in an instant, his heart pounding. It was alive, but barely. Whatever it had done had drained it completely. "You just keep pulling surprises, don't you?" he murmured, securing the creature more carefully this time. A race against time. With the Syndicate temporarily out of the picture, Evan set his sights on the coordinates from the transmission. The ridge of glass stretched on for miles, but the navigation map indicated a break ahead, a narrow valley that would lead them to the supposed safe haven. Evan's thoughts churned as he guided the skimmer forward. The creature wasn't just some random alien, it was something far more powerful, something the Syndicate was desperate to control. And now, he was stuck in the middle of it. He glanced at the faint outline of the valley ahead, a sliver of hope in the chaos. "Almost there," he said, more to himself than the unconscious creature. But even as the storm began to ease and the valley drew closer, Evan knew this was far from over. The Syndicate wouldn't stop. Whatever secrets this creature held, they were worth more than his life and probably more than anyone else's. As the skimmer entered the valley, the storm's winds began to subside, revealing a faint glow in the distance. Evan's heart quickened. The safe haven was real. But what awaited them there? And could it truly protect them from what was coming? The safe haven. The skimmer's engines whined as it descended into the narrow valley, its headlights cutting through the lingering haze of the storm. The faint glow in the distance grew brighter with every passing moment, casting eerie reflections off the jagged rocks that lined the path. Evan's grip on the controls tightened. He had no idea what awaited him at this so-called safe haven, but he didn't have the luxury of turning back. The alien creature stirred slightly in the cargo hold, its faintly glowing eyes flickering open. Its strength was almost entirely spent, but it managed to lift its head and peer into the distance. Safe, there, it rasped, its voice barely audible but filled with an unshakable certainty. Evan nodded, not entirely sure if he was trying to reassure the creature or himself. Let's hope you're right. The path through the valley twisted and turned, the terrain growing increasingly treacherous. Loose rocks shifted beneath the skimmer's stabilizers, and the faint hum of syndicate hovercrafts in the distance kept Evan's nerves on edge. He knew it wouldn't be long before they found him again. Finally, the glow ahead resolved into something tangible, a structure carved directly into the rock face. Its architecture was a blend of alien and human design, with sleek, curved edges and weathered metallic plating. Large, glowing panels flanked the entrance, pulsating with an energy that Evan couldn't quite identify. This was no ordinary outpost. Evan brought the skimmer to a halt a few meters from the entrance, cutting the engine and stepping out cautiously. The air was heavy with an unnatural stillness, broken only by the faint hum of the glowing panels. The creature let out a low growl from the cargo hold, its body trembling as it tried to rise. "Easy," Evan said, rushing to its side. He gently helped it down, feeling the weight of its exhaustion as it leaned against him for support. Together, they approached the structure, its towering doors sliding open with a soft hiss as they neared. The sanctuary's guardian. Inside, the air was cool and sterile, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. The walls were lined with intricate alien markings that seemed to shift and shimmer when viewed from different angles. Soft, ambient light illuminated the space, casting long shadows across the metallic floor. Evan barely had time to take it all in before a figure emerged from the shadows. It was humanoid but distinctly alien, with elongated limbs, skin the color of polished bronze, and glowing amber eyes that radiated intelligence. The figure carried no weapons, but its presence alone was enough to put Evan on edge. "You've brought it here," the figure said, its voice smooth and resonant. It wasn't a question but a statement, as though it had been expecting them. Evan straightened, instinctively positioning himself slightly in front of the creature. "Yeah, and I'd appreciate some answers. What is this place? And what's so important about this thing?" The alien's gaze shifted to the creature, its expression softening. "You've done well to bring it here. This sanctuary was designed to shield it from those who would exploit its power." Evan frowned. "And what exactly is it? Because the syndicate seems pretty determined to get their hands on it." The alien hesitated, its glowing eyes narrowing slightly. "It is the last of its kind, a living conduit of energy and knowledge, capable of great destruction or unparalleled creation. The syndicate seeks to harness its power as a weapon, but such power was never meant to be controlled." Evan's stomach tightened. He glanced at the creature, now slumped against the wall, its breath shallow but steady. "You're telling me this thing is some kind of super weapon?" The alien shook its head. "Not a weapon. A being of balance. But in the wrong hands, it could become one. The syndicate strikes." Before Evan could process the weight of those words, the sanctuary's walls trembled with a low, rhythmic rumble. The alien guardian stiffened, its amber eyes glowing brighter. "They've found us." Evan swore under his breath, instinctively reaching for his plasma cutter. "How? I thought this place was supposed to be shielded." The alien stepped toward a control panel embedded in the wall, its slender fingers dancing across the glowing symbols. "The syndicate's persistence is greater than anticipated. Their technology must have evolved." The rumble grew louder, accompanied by the distant whine of engines. Evan's mind raced. He was no soldier, and he wasn't equipped to fend off another syndicate assault. He turned to the alien. "You said this place was built to protect it. What do we do now?" The alien didn't respond immediately. Instead, it turned its gaze to the creature. It must awaken fully. Only then can it protect itself and us. Evan's eyes widened. Awaken? You mean it's been holding back? The alien nodded. Its power has been dormant for its own safety. But now, there is no other choice. The creature let out a low growl, its glowing eyes locking onto Evan's. There was a strange clarity in its gaze, as if it understood everything that was happening. "Do it," it rasped. The alien moved quickly, retrieving a small, crystalline device from a hidden compartment in the wall. It knelt beside the creature, placing the device against its chest. The crystal pulsed with a bright, rhythmic glow, syncing with the creature's faint energy. Evan watched in tense silence as the creature's body began to change. Its fur shimmered once more, shifting through a kaleidoscope of colors. The faint lines of energy along its limbs brightened, pulsing with an intensity that filled the room. The air grew thick with a tangible energy, making Evan's hair stand on end. Outside, the sound of syndicate hovercrafts grew deafening. The sanctuary's outer defenses activated, beams of concentrated energy lashing out at the approaching ships. But it wouldn't be enough. The syndicate was relentless, their firepower overwhelming. Suddenly, the creature rose to its full height, its form radiating power. The light emanating from its body filled the room, casting sharp, flickering shadows. It let out a piercing cry, the sound resonating deep within Evan's chest. The alien guardian stepped back, its voice calm but firm. "It is ready." A power unleashed. The sanctuary doors exploded inward, and syndicate enforcers stormed in, their weapons raised. Evan ducked behind a nearby console, his heart pounding. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but he knew it would be unlike anything he had ever seen. The creature moved with blinding speed, a blur of light and color. The first enforcer didn't even have time to react before being slammed against the wall, their weapon clattering uselessly to the floor. The air crackled with energy as the creature unleashed a wave of raw power, sending several more enforcers flying. Evan peeked out from his cover, his jaw dropping. The syndicate forces were no match for the creature's unleashed potential. Plasma bolts fizzled harmlessly against the energy field surrounding it, and its attacks were swift and devastating. The alien guardian stepped beside Evan, its expression unreadable. This is why it must remain hidden. Its power is both salvation and destruction. Evan swallowed hard, watching as the creature dismantled the syndicate forces with terrifying precision. For the first time, he truly understood the stakes. This wasn't just about survival, it was about protecting something far greater than himself. As the last of the syndicate enforcers fell, the creature turned to Evan, its glowing eyes softening. Despite its immense power, there was a deep sadness in its gaze, a burden that Evan now realized it had carried for far too long. "We need to leave," the alien guardian said, breaking the silence. "The syndicate will send more. This sanctuary is no longer safe." Evan nodded, his resolve hardening. "Then let's go. But we're not running forever. We're going to end this." The creature let out a low growl of agreement, and together, they prepared to face whatever lay ahead, into the unknown. The sanctuary's walls trembled as distant rumbles echoed through the valley. The syndicate wasn't going to stop, they never did. Evan clenched his fists, staring at the aftermath of the battle. The alien creature stood beside him, its glowing energy subdued now, but its presence still commanding. The alien guardian worked quickly at the control panel, its fingers gliding across the shimmering symbols. Evan finally broke the silence. "We can't keep running forever. There's got to be a way to end this." The guardian didn't look up. "To end this, you must destroy what they seek. As long as it exists, they will hunt you." Evan turned to the creature, whose glowing eyes met his. It was calm now, its breathing steady, but the weight of its power was palpable. "We're not just talking about some artifact here," Evan said, his voice low. This thing is alive. The Guardian's gaze hardened. It is more than alive. It is the last of its kind, a creation far beyond the understanding of the Syndicate. Its potential is limitless. But so too is the danger it poses if it falls into the wrong hands. The creature let out a soft growl, its voice reverberating in Evan's mind. I will not let them take me. But I will not destroy myself, not yet. Evan frowned. Not yet? What does that mean? The creature's luminous eyes dimmed slightly as it spoke. There is a place. Far from here. A place where I can be safe, where my power can be used for something greater. But the path is dangerous. The alien Guardian finally stepped away from the console, turning to face them. It speaks of the rift, a dimensional fold on the edge of this system. It is said to be impenetrable, but if it can reach the core, it may find safety. However, the Syndicate will not let you get there easily. Evan sighed, running a hand through his hair. Of course it's not easy. Nothing about this has been. The Guardian extended a slender hand, revealing a small crystalline device. This will mask its energy signature temporarily. It won't last long, but it may give you the time you need to reach the rift. Evan took the device, his fingers brushing against its cool surface. And what about you? He asked, glancing at the Guardian. I will remain here and delay them as long as I can, the Guardian replied. My duty is to protect it, no matter the cost. Evan hesitated but nodded. Thank you. For everything. The Guardian inclined its head. Go now. Every second counts. The escape. Evan guided the creature back into the skimmer, securing it carefully in the cargo hold. The crystalline device hummed faintly as he activated it, and the creature's glow dimmed further until it was nearly imperceptible. The storm had mostly passed, leaving the valley eerily quiet. Evan started the skimmer, its engines rumbling to life, and steered it toward the path that would take them out of the sanctuary. He cast one last glance back at the alien Guardian, who stood silently at the entrance, its amber eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The skimmer climbed out of the valley, the landscape opening up to a vast expanse of jagged terrain. The coordinates for the rift were locked into the navigation system, a treacherous path through asteroid fields and Syndicate-controlled zones. Evan's knuckles whitened as he gripped the controls. He had faced danger before, but this was different. This wasn't just about survival anymore. The creature shifted slightly in the hold, its voice weak but steady. The rift is our only hope. Evan glanced back at it. Hope, huh? Funny how that's in short supply these days. The creature didn't respond, but its faint glow seemed to pulse in rhythm with the skimmer's hum, as though it was drawing strength from the journey. Syndicate intercept. They had barely cleared the valley when the radar lit up again. Evan groaned. You've got to be kidding me. 3 Syndicate ships appeared on the horizon, their sleek forms slicing through the air with deadly precision. Their engines roared, and bright flashes of plasma fire streaked toward the skimmer. Evan veered hard to the left, narrowly avoiding the first volley. You'd think they'd take a hint, he muttered, slamming the throttle forward. The skimmer surged ahead, its stabilizers whining against the uneven terrain. The Syndicate ships split up, flanking him on either side. Plasma bolts rained down, scorching the ground and sending debris flying. Evan gritted his teeth, weaving through the chaos. Hold on back there, he shouted. The creature growled faintly, its energy beginning to flare again. I can help. Not yet, Evan snapped. You're barely holding it together. Let me handle this. He spotted a narrow canyon ahead and steered toward it, hoping to use the tight space to his advantage. The skimmer shot into the canyon, the walls rushing past in a blur. The Syndicate ships followed, their firepower lighting up the narrow passage. Evan swerved to avoid a falling boulder, his heart pounding. The canyon grew tighter, forcing the Syndicate ships to slow down. One of them miscalculated a turn, slamming into the canyon wall and exploding in a fiery blast. 2 down, Evan muttered. Come on. The remaining ships adjusted their formation, one of them pulling ahead to block the canyon's exit. Evan's eyes darted to the navigation screen. They were close to the rift, but not close enough. As he approached the canyon's end, the lead syndicate ship fired, sending a barrage of plasma bolts directly in his path. Evan jerked the controls, narrowly avoiding the blast, but the skimmer's engine sputtered in protest. The creature's growl deepened. "Let me help." Evan hesitated for a split second before nodding. "Fine. Do your thing." The creature's body flared with light, its energy surging outward. A wave of crackling energy erupted from the skimmer, disrupting the syndicate ship's systems. The lead ship faltered, its engine sputtering before it careened into the ground. Evan whooped. "That's what I'm talking about." The final syndicate ship retreated, its pilot unwilling to face whatever power the creature had just unleashed. Evan pushed the skimmer out of the canyon, the open expanse of the rift's edge stretching before him. The rift awaits. The sky ahead shimmered with an otherworldly glow, the rift swirling like a living storm. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a gateway to the unknown. Evan slowed the skimmer, his breath catching in his throat. "Well, there it is." The creature's voice echoed softly in his mind. "It's the only way." Evan nodded, gripping the controls tightly. "Then let's finish this." As the skimmer surged toward the rift, Evan couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far greater than he could imagine.